Right. Let us see. Are we live or are we not? We shall see in a second. Is it updating? I think we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you to this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It is the 24th of March and it is almost exactly 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So, everything that happens after this point that changes the story. So everything that I'm about to tell you, everything that we're about to discuss, all of the news that is about to come out is true and is as it is at the time of making the live stream. Anything after this, there will be another update and you can expect videos to come through in due time. Robot, how you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We have quite a full show for you today. Chris, how you doing, sir? There's a lot of stuff that happened. Actually, not a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend, but definitely a lot of stuff that happened since yesterday. So I made a number of videos over the last few weeks calling into question, actually over the last few months, I've made a number of videos calling into question the green shoots of the South African economy. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on today. We're also going to be talking about the Iran situation and how that has been evolving because there's some big changes that has happened there. But perhaps our biggest story, and definitely something that I want to kick off with in the immediate term, is right here at home. It is quite significant. Now, SMWX made a video yesterday, actually the day before yesterday on Sunday, where he had some shocking allegations that he revealed in this video. And if you have not watched this yet, I'll very quickly just break it down for you so that you sort of understand. There is a letter. The letter is from Vusi Katmaklala's cellmate. The letter was reportedly included in General Humkonazi, man on your screen right now, in his testimony to the ad hoc committee of Parliament, all to do with the Madlanga Commission, as well as, you know, the problems in this country with massive allegations of fraud, as well as just criminal intent. We have since found out from the Madlanga Commission that pretty much every single police officer in Gauteng works for the cartels. We have found out that there is so much rot and corruption within the police services, within the intelligence services of South Africa, just all the way through. It's absolutely insane just how much stuff exists in this. This letter, however, that SMWX revealed the day before yesterday on Sunday actually makes things even more worrisome. And there's another piece of evidence that came out yesterday that seems to back up a lot of the things that's discussed in this letter, but then also makes a number of new allegations. So first, what is in the letter? Well, the letter is from the cellmate of Vusi Katmaklala, and the cellmate alleges that Vusi bragged about being involved in Phala Phala. He bragged about knowing the nephew of Cyril Ramaphosa, Morgan something. I can't remember his surname now, but he is the nephew of Cyril Ramaphosa, nephew or cousin, and he knew him. Katmaklala said that he was involved in taking couches to Phala Phala. You guys remember the Phala Phala scandal? Yes, that Phala Phala scandal. The scandal where some money is found in a couch on the president's farm, Phala Phala. And the president goes, well, I sold some buffalo. Well, what do you know? Right? And that's sort of the end of the story. If you guys don't remember, we're still waiting for the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, to do anything about this story. As far as we know, this story has been investigated. As far as we know, charges at some point has to be brought, and yet nothing has happened with this story. It's sort of reminiscent of Jacob Zuma's endless sort of encounters with the law, and then just nothing ever actually occurring with this. So the new allegation is that this couch that was found with cash was a frequent occurrence. Katmaklala and most likely other underworld bosses, this is how they transported money. Now, the exact use of the money, that we don't quite know. But if you put yesterday's evidence together with this letter, something starts to emerge. Now, there's other pieces of information that also comes out of this. suggesting that President Ramaphosa may in fact have been involved in the Tembisa hospital scandal, that there may have been even greater involvement with a number of other scandals that has happened in South Africa with regards to corruption and criminal underworld activities. But again, the letter itself is from a known criminal, a man that has lied multiple times. In fact, he's in prison for lies that he has told. So this is a guy that genuinely has something to gain from turning into a state's witness, because he could argue, or at least attempt to argue, a reduced sentence, the early release for good conduct, and all the rest of it. So that should be kept in mind. We know that the letter at least carried some weight because General Mkhwanazi decided to include this letter in his testimony and in the evidence that he handed over to the ad hoc committee. Now, the reason General Mkhwanazi claims he handed the letter over isn't because he believes every word of the letter. It's because there's a lot of things in the letter that they were able to factually check. There are cell phone numbers in the letter that turns out to be the numbers of the people that it claims to be. There are events that the cellmate is aware of that was not public knowledge at the time. Events that even included people like General Mkhwanazi. So you can imagine why General Mkhwanazi is saying, we have to at least look into the evidence here. And the problem is that they can't take it to the president, because this was, remember, when General Mkhwanazi first spoke out, the main thing that everyone had a problem with, the main thing that everyone said was absolutely unacceptable, was the fact that General Mkhwanazi did not go to President Ramaphosa. People like Paul O'Sullivan criticized General Mkhwanazi because he broke the chain of command. If you have a problem with one of the ministers in the cabinet, you have to go to the president. Remember, all police officers serve effectively at the behest of the president, because the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces as well as the defense forces of South Africa. That would include the police. So why did he break rank? I even at the time said the only reason he would break rank is because there's a lot more to the story, right? There might be some things that General Mkhwanazi himself is too afraid to actually come out with, because he understands that if he's the one breaking it, his life may be over. Now, just to give you guys a short... I don't even have to do this, but I will. Just yesterday, or again Sunday, but just yesterday I was made aware of this. Another 638 million rand just vanished without a trace. Remember, Cyril Ramaphosa was the president touted by every single analyst in the know to be the man that was going to save South Africa. Because here is a man that made billions in the private sector, being a capitalist, and he understands how business works, which of course is not true. Cyril Ramaphosa made all of his money as a caterer with black economic empowerment. That's it. Cyril Ramaphosa never built a single business. Cyril Ramaphosa never started a single company. Cyril Ramaphosa is a man that knows nothing about how to actually do business, and yet made a lot of money, which should make us ask some questions. But nevertheless, they said he's not a man that is corrupt. He's not a man that believes in corruption. He knows how to run a successful company, and he will be the man to right the ship. Well, we can look at the myriad arrays of corruption scandals that has come out since Ramaphosa took office. We're not even talking about the state capture era of Jacob Zuma. Let's just look at Ramaphosa, right? And we can just look at two. The Tembisa hospital scandal. How many billions were stolen there? We have an education scandal that happened last year with another millions and millions of rands just gone. No one knows where it is. The school scandal, I believe, in Ekurhuleni. Another scandal where just millions are gone. No one knows where the hell that went. And now this, 638 million rand just gone. This money, what was it meant for? Skills development for the youth. South Africa has over 60% youth unemployment. If there has ever been a group that is in desperate need of skills development, it would be the youth of this country that is at the moment unemployable, thanks to massively bad education systems, as well as a government that doesn't know how to start an economy. And this money was stolen. No one knows where it is. This is the Auditor General that came out and said, yeah, this is just gone. We don't know where it is. Peter, I don't see anyone else claiming to have internet problems, so maybe just refresh the web page, because I'm definitely not having any problems. My stream seems to be doing fine. I hope all of you are doing super well. Everyone that just joined, welcome. Really happy to have you guys here. Okay, so if we now look at this, right, and we look at the letter that we have from SMWX that was included with General Mkwanazi's testimony, then we go to this. This is breaking news yesterday on X. This was on March the 23rd, 2026. The document in question, I have done everything in my power to try and find any source out there that either A, refutes the document, or B, confirms the document. It's quiet. All of my analysis, looking at other documents from the ad hoc committee, because as you can see here at the top, this is a protected disclosure in terms of the Protected Disclosure Act number 26 of 2000. That is correct. Submission to the ad hoc committee into allegations by General Mkwanazi, March 2026. This is from Phala Phala, Detainee. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce his surname. And his former position is a crime intelligence analyst, South African Police Service. All of that is true. This Phala Phala did testify before the ad hoc committee last year. Big portions of his testimony was actually in secret because he had information that he believed would put his life in danger. But he is an individual that has spoken. We know that he had some information. More importantly, there were parts of his testimony that he wasn't allowed to share in Parliament because it was deemed to be too sensitive. And then he was given the option to submit this later on as video evidence. This would allow the relevant people to look at it, see if national security is at risk, and that which doesn't put national security at risk, that would then be allowed in. Since his testimony, there's been nothing, right? We haven't heard a single peep from all of this. But the allegations, nonetheless, is quite interesting. So going over to the document, we find on page 1 his purpose for the disclosure, and he says, at least if this document is to be believed, that he submitted the video evidence, but the video evidence was never taken anywhere. So he has not been allowed to actually complete his testimony. He then explains why he didn't go to the president and instead decided to come to Parliament. And he says here, before I set out the evidence, I must explain why I bring this disclosure to this committee and not to the commander-in-chief of the country, the president of the republic. The evidence contained in his pocketbook and contemptuous notes reveal that the conspiracy against General Mfazi reached the highest levels of power. One of his investigations placed the crime scene on the president's farm. The Minister of Police sat in the president's office when he received news of the death and sighed with relief. A chief of staff in the presidency directed the seizure of evidence files from his home, and these files were to be handed to General Vuma. The files have never been recovered. We believe some have been shredded. So, this is, at least if this document is to be believed, this is why he couldn't go to the president and instead decided to come to the committee. So what does it say? If you look at the documents here, so first he starts with why was General Mfazi, who was General Mfazi and what did he investigate? Well, he was part of the MK Umkhonto Sizwe. This was the military terrorist wing of the ANC. And it turns out that after joining the, anti-corruption units of South Africa, he really took this job seriously, at least according to Phalandi here. Now, here's the Phala Phala. The Phala Phala burglary at President Ramaphosa's farm, the official version of events recorded by the public protector, is false. General Mfazi was not informed of the burglary by Major General Wally Rood on March 2020. Even former National Commissioner Kela Sitoli disputes that account. The truth is that Arthur Fraser first alerted General Mfazi to the matter in June 2020. Now, General Mfazi has since been murdered. At least, that's what a lot of people suggest may have happened to him. A lot of members within his family thinks that he was poisoned. You even had General Mfazi that believe that some high officials within the police service may have been behind a lot of political task killings and the like. This man right here also believes that he was in fact poisoned, and that the money for the assassination originated from Phala Phala. So according to at least this account, there is reason to believe that Phala Phala may be far more intricately involved in the criminal underworld in South Africa than what was previously believed. Because previously, this was just the president selling buffalo, if you guys remember. Now it turns out that you have Vusi Kat Maklala in this letter that was revealed 2 days ago by SMWX, as well as now in this testimony, that Phala Phala was far more than just a farm that the president had some buffalo on. He looks into the cover-up, and he actually alleges in this that the cover-up can only have come from the highest office in the land. The way in which the murder of General Mfazi was covered up happened so quickly that it had to have been people that actually had inside knowledge of what actually happened. So I'll just read it to you. On 8 July 2021, within hours of General Mfazi's death, those who had reason to silence him moved swiftly. They understood that his knowledge had not died with him. It lived in his files. Those files contained the portfolio of evidence against a senior crime intelligence official, the complete findings of his Phala Phala investigation, the FDA syndicate documents, the records of 1.6 billion rand in PPE corruption, and the information regarding drug allegations against Minister Cheli. A chief of staff in the presidency was already on the scene. He directed family members and drivers to hand over those files to General Vuma. For a time, Mrs. Lindelwa Mfazi was prevented from entering her own home. It was only through her persistence and insistence that she forced her way inside. It was then upon that forced entry that she witnessed the circumstances in which her husband lay dead. So in other words, these guys arrived even before her husband, before they found out that her husband had died. So there's a lot of questions around this, and even subs. So this is stuff that I could find in trying to actually verify this document. There are within subs, right after his death, generals that say that his death does not look natural, that this may have been a political killing or at least some kind of crime that has been committed here, because they just don't know. Now, the pocketbook in question here was his personal pocketbook that he kept sort of separate notes on. This was not part of his official files, and this is stuff that the people who seized his laptop and his files didn't know about. But his wife did allow Philandi to actually read the pocketbook and also make copies of the pocketbook. And it is in this pocketbook that a lot of allegations then come to the fore. Now, based on his personal assessment, he believes that the president, as well as senior officials within the government, is very much involved in the criminal syndicates of this country. Now, it should be made super clear. We don't know whether any of these documents are in fact legitimate documents. Right now, the document that I just read from is a document that is on social media. Not a single media house has reported on this, not even to say that this is a fake or false document. Not the EFF, nor the MK, nor the DA has come out speaking out against the document or demanding that this document be investigated further. Furthermore, the letter that SMWX revealed 2 days ago on his YouTube channel, that letter has not been carried by any of the media houses, and we are now 2 days later. That document or that letter has not been carried forward by any members of the EFF, nor any members of the MK, nor any members of the DA. So what exactly is going on? Is this just some elaborate scheme to try and mislead people and maybe cast doubt on the president? And this is why the parliament isn't putting out any official statements. Now, it should be mentioned, there are two people that did come out and in the strongest terms renounce the letter from Vusi with SMWX. And that was the Patriotic Alliance. They were the ones who came out. Kanani, as well as Gayton McKenzie, came out and said, this is nonsense. They had nothing to do with it, but that's a separate story. We're not talking about, Gaten McKenzie's criminal enterprise in this video. We're talking about President Cyril Ramaphosa. So with all of that said, there's a couple of things that stand out to me that I think we should all take note of. First is we now have two documents that seem to be playing off one another, linking up in certain places, but also diverging in others. This does not appear, at least to my initial investigation, to be forgeries, right? So this isn't the letter came first and then someone just invented this other document. But then we do live in the age of AI. It is possible, right? This could just be an AI invention. So keep that in mind. But we do have this. So what other pieces of information can we put alongside this to give us maybe a clearer picture of what happened here? Well, first, let's go back to Phala Phala. When Phala Phala happens, there's a number of people that demand answers. The answers come, but the answers are not answers. The answers are evasions. It's buffalo sales. People ask, well, why was the money in the couch? Well, I just forgot it there. Or at least I don't have an answer to it. The president's story doesn't even change much because it seems like no one ever even asks the president any follow-up questions. President Cyril Ramaphosa famously doesn't give a lot of interviews, but even then, surely there must have been some investigation started into Phala Phala. The answer, no. There has been zero investigations into Phala Phala, at least from what we can tell. The NPA is supposed to bring some kind of court case against Cyril Ramaphosa, or at least against people that may have been involved in the burglary of Phala Phala, and yet nothing. There's literally nothing. This story has gone nowhere. You'll also note, and just look at the conspicuous silence. The DA doesn't dare to demand questions about Phala Phala. The EFF doesn't dare to demand accountability for Phala Phala. MK does not demand accountability for Phala Phala. Remember, for the DA, maybe it kind of makes sense. They're in government now. They shouldn't really be throwing their own president under the bus, right? So politically speaking, it might not be expedient for them to demand answers for Phala Phala. But the MK and the EFF both hate Cyril Ramaphosa. They would love nothing more than to see Cyril Ramaphosa pay for what they consider to be his crimes against whatever, right? Why aren't they demanding it? Why aren't they running with these letters? The one letter was included in General Mkhwanazi's testimony from SMWX. We at least know that that letter is real. We can't know if the allegations are real, but we do know that the letter is real. Moreover, the president, who seemingly, according to this letter at least, is involved in some way, shape, or form, or at least there's allegations of involvement, the president was allowed not to testify before the ad hoc committee, and instead a number of questions was sent to the president, and the president could then just answer these questions in writing. This leads me to believe that there is some kind of cover-up happening. The president of South Africa, whether guilty or not, seems to be protected. There appears to be an impenetrable wall that every single political party in this country has signed on to. We can attack the minister Mkhunu. We can attack, General Fanny Masemola. We can attack General Mkhwanazi. We can attack Paul O'Sullivan. We can have a field day with everyone around this story. But the one guy that none of us is allowed to touch is the president. He may not be asked. He may not be directly investigated. He may not be questioned in front of the nation. Remember, the job of parliament is to hold the executive accountable. The president is not above parliament. Parliament is, in its sole reason for existing, is to hold the president accountable. That's the whole point of parliament. And the president, unlike all of the other witnesses, can just go, well, I'm not going to testify in front of the ad hoc committee. I'll just answer a bunch of questions on the side. Just send me a note. Send me an email. I'll see what I need to answer. We also don't really know what those answers were, not at least in their entirety. So putting all of this together, putting all of the sort of the air around Ramaphosa, the questions about Iran, the questions about the MTN in Iran, the questions about Hamas and South Africa's alleged knowledge prior to the October 7th attacks, putting aside, or at least including, not putting aside, but including South Africa's ties to underworld terrorist regimes and terrorist groups within the world, the president's own ties with Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela, the president's ties to underground organizations during the apartheid struggle. There are a number of questions, and both of these pieces of evidence appears to suggest that a lot of the scandals in our country is directly related to the president. Now, the only reason I can think of why neither the EFF or the MK has said anything about this is because they are involved. They know that there are certain threads that they can simply not allow to be pulled on. There are certain people that if they were to go after these people, they themselves would very quickly be implicated. That's the only thing I can think of. Because this pieces of information is like it's like handing Cyril Ramaphosa's head on a silver platter to Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma, and yet neither of them have jumped on these stories. Now, it could be that these documents are fake and they know it, but then why aren't they saying it? This is the thing that I find perhaps most conspicuous. In a world where News 24 literally falls over themselves to fake news, AfriForum, and Solidarity, and anything that Afrikaners ever have to say, even when they fake news wrongly, the News 24 has not come out and suggested that these are fake documents. News 24 has put out no arguments that these documents are have been built up or have been generated through AI, or perhaps the documents must be seen in their full context because the context matters. Nothing. The Daily Maverick, City Press, every single one of our mainstream media organizations are completely silent on the matter. Where's the fact checking? I mean, I don't trust their fact checking, but I would at least have expected that if these documents were indeed fake, they would prove it, or at least say that they are. The fact that none of the media houses in South Africa are even willing to touch these documents tells me, and this we also know, because we have eyes. Every single scandal that happens around the ANC, News 24, Daily Maverick, all of them are all over it. Whenever a scandal involves President Cyril Ramaphosa, they're very careful in how they word things. They're very careful in how they explain things. And they always give President Cyril Ramaphosa the benefit of the doubt. He's never the guilty one. There's just some questions that need to be answered. And whenever he answers those questions, they immediately accept it as the gospel. So clearly, President Cyril Ramaphosa either has all of these organizations in his back pocket, which I would actually not put past him, because remember, a lot of these media organizations are owned by South African billionaires. South African billionaires that most likely have phenomenal relationships with Cyril Ramaphosa and directly benefit from Cyril Ramaphosa being in power. And so, fundamentally, you might expect that there's a lot of protection running for President Cyril Ramaphosa. And all I can think of here is that these media organizations can't come out and say that it is fake news because they know that they would be caught lying red-handed. So the better option is just say nothing. If we say nothing, then there is nothing, right? We can just say we never saw it. We weren't on X that day. We weren't on YouTube. We didn't see the videos about this. And then just go on as normal, being the voice of truth for the nation or whatever. Right? This is the only thing I can think of, because this is in the public interest. This matters. People should know about this, and yet our media is dead silent on it. Not a word, not a peep, just nothing. What's happening? What's going on? Truth is, we genuinely don't know. Our president may actually be a crime boss. He may actually be the head cartel boss of this country. And thanks to a media that is completely complicit, we just don't know. But I also kind of think that that is something that we might find out. If you guys remember ESCOM has just been forced by AfriForum and the courts to reveal all of their supplier information as well as the contracts that these suppliers have received from ESCOM. The fact that ESCOM were fighting so hard to keep that information silent suggests that there's a bit more to this story than originally thought. And then, more importantly, I think the Americans are already investigating Cyril Ramaphosa as well as some of the other head honchos of the ANC. And there's some interesting stories that we're going to be covering a bit later on, where I'll show you how desperate the ANC is actually getting. Because clearly the ANC, they really want the United States to stop looking at South Africa. Like it's very clear that the United States looking into South Africa is not something that they're currently enjoying. But what do you guys think? What's your thoughts here? Before we get to the other stories, let me quickly get your information here. What you guys think? Zuma said years ago he knew too much. He will spill the beans. They are all involved. Anita, I agree with you. Nope, it is ANC 24. It's true. They are silent because they are captured and complicit. I agree with that. Stephen, it's really simple. Organized leadership from the people need to occur, but there's too much to lose. So, Hartzog, I get what you're saying. Right? Organized leadership from the people need to occur. The problem that you have in this country that I don't think a lot of people really consider is, what does that organized leadership actually look like? Right? What does a new South African government actually look like? This is a serious question, and it's one that we need to ask ourselves. If we're gonna imagine that there might be a world in which South Africa can free itself from the evil that has been visited upon it by the ANC, the question becomes how. Now, I am not convinced that there is a civilian-led government that can actually fix this country. And the reason I fail to see how that would be possible, is the levels of corruption in this country runs so deep that any government that tries to undo the corruption would likely meet with resistance at every single level. So we can go through it from top to bottom. Right at the top echelons of government, parliament, the union buildings, I guarantee you the level of cronyism and the level of cadre deployment that happen in those in those areas are overwhelming. So you walk into a government not as the new ruling government, you're walking into a very hostile work environment. A hostile work environment that is aimed at destroying you. Just hold on quickly. Jock Extreme. Okay, bye. Sorry, my brother was calling me. So we go, whoa, Pet with the 20 community subs over on the channel. Thank you so much for the 20 memberships, Pet. I really appreciate you, sir. You are far too kind. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get some hearts in chat for Pet? Very much appreciate. Guys, your financial support is what allows me to do what I do. So thank you. I really appreciate you. So we have the upper echelons of government completely captured and corrupt, right? You're walking into the union buildings as the new president of South Africa, and you are surrounded by people that desperately want to see you fail because they all are connected to the parasitical symbiotic relationship that is the state and the cadres feeding off of it. Let's go one step down. Parliament. The entirety of parliament, you're walking into that also with a complete corrupt state. Now let's go to the minister positions. Because remember, what you see as the minister is only the face of the operation. He actually makes very few of the real decisions. The real decisions are made by the bureaucrats that none of us vote for. These are hundreds of people that work in these departments that have decades and years and decades of plans that they're playing out. The minister just sort of goes, I approve, and then it gets passed into law. But the minister actually doesn't do much. You're walking into that, right? And all of those guys are cadres. They were deployed in order to be there. This is why we're seeing so little movement in the country from DA ministers trying to fix things, but ultimately they're just doing more and more of the same. This is why you've seen every single DA minister publicly denounce BEE and yet employ it in their own governments, right? One of the saving graces, so we can actually look here at President Trump. And this is how it would have to look, because I do agree with you. In order to defeat the ANC, you would need an organized movement that sort of comes in as a popularized uprising and just washes the system out. But one of the key hidden gems of President Trump's presidency was the fact that he lost in 2020. That was actually the greatest thing that could ever have happened. And I realize a lot of people would say, well, imagine if we didn't have the 4 disastrous years of Biden. You would not have had current day President Trump. What the loss in 2020 allowed President Trump to do is reimagine. Because now he had his time in the White House. He had his time in government. And he understood government is captured. Government is corrupt. If I want to govern and govern the country the way that I believe it should be governed, I'm going to have to come with a full team of people. I'm going to have to replace everyone. Everyone. And that's exactly what he did. Right? That's exactly what President Trump did. He walked onto Capitol Hill and he basically overhauled the entire thing. From start to finish, the whole government is upended, overhauled, retried, new. Right? But he needed 4 years in order to get that done. You're going to need that level of commitment here in South Africa. You're going to need people that understand, right, as a minister, I'm going to need 10 or 15 people that can run this and understand how to run this department well. And I'm going to have to fire all of the others. That creates a whole new set of problems. Because the second in this country you start firing people, you will have mass demonstrations. Now, ordinarily, you'd call on the police to stop those mass demonstrations. But, well, what do you guys think? Do you think you could call the police to stop mass demonstrations in South Africa? The answer is no. The police would also be out on the streets, right, demonstrating, and they'll be part of the whole group. Normally, then you would call the army. They would be the ones to help you, but there's also no army here. So ultimately, if you were to try and fix South Africa, I have a feeling you'll end up setting this country on fire. The ANC, through their corruption, has effectively turned the entire thing into a cesspool. And I don't know how we fix that. Like, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I like to think that I'm quite an upbeat guy. And I like to think that I try, at least insofar as possible, to always provide answers. But I don't know what the answers are. Like, I don't know how you fix this. Because the ANC have been so successful in the complete corruption of the entire system, back to front, up, down. No matter where you look, there is corruption in every single one of the departments in South Africa, in every single provincial department, in every single national department, in every single municipal department. There is corruption everywhere. I don't know how you uproot that. I just don't. Right? Not to mention the fact that the DA's silence in all of this might suggest that even they are interested in I don't know. I'm not suggesting that the DA is complicit in the corruption. I just don't understand why the DA isn't saying more. I understand that they enjoy their cushy jobs as ministers, and they're liking the GNU. Uh, but at some point, you have to go. But wait, we can't keep backing you, right? We can't keep this going. You are just a bad guy, and then someone needs to step up and say enough. So yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't know what the answer is. I just know that right now I'm not seeing any government that fixes South Africa. I don't see it. Not without bloodshed. Actually, that's the one solution I do see. I have to, for legal reasons, make this very clear. I am not calling for a civil war. I'm not calling for armed conflict. This is not the point. I'm simply discussing the various ways in which this plays itself out. And the only way I see this country fixing itself is if you add some kind of armed conflict that gets rid of all the corrupt people. And even then, you might not be able to get all of them. So yeah, I don't know. It is a mess. Is the best I'll say. We need a Rupert Lowe type character. Again, you're talking about different countries, right? You're talking about the UK and America. These are countries where, when you talk about people like Rupert Lowe, or you talk about people like President Trump, you're talking about people who come from countries where, yes, there is corruption. Every country has corruption. This is true. But most countries have a sort of unwritten rule when it comes to corruption. And the rule is as follows. You can be corrupt provided we don't catch you. Right? So we would prefer if you're not corrupt. But if you are going to be corrupt, you're not allowed to get caught. And then you do see, actually, when these people get caught, they do face justice, right? There is a justice system that, at least to some extent, do hold them accountable, at least to some extent. That's not what you see in South Africa. We have no criminal justice system that isn't corrupt, right? The people who are corrupt are consistently protected by the criminal justice system. And you already see it, even in places where there are guilty dead to rights. Shabir Sheikh comes to mind. Jacob Zuma comes to mind. The evidence against these people were overwhelming. So the courts had no ability to find them not guilty on the evidence. So instead, what happened? Both of them went, I'm sick. And the court went, oh man, this guy is close to death. We should let him out of jail. Medical parole, they call it. I'm not sure. Like, what the hell are we talking? Medical parole? This is a criminal. If a criminal gets ill in jail and the jail can't afford to give them medical aid, then the criminal dies in jail. The criminal should not have been a criminal in the first place. It is not the case that you get ill enough, you can just get a doctor's note and then go on your way. But that's not how it works, right? But that is how it works in South Africa. So our criminal justice system is captured. So when you point to people like Rupert Lowe or people like Donald Trump, you need to understand that their systems were very different. There was still some elements of the system that could be salvaged. I don't believe the same exists here in South Africa. I believe here in South Africa, the system is in such a corrupt state that there is nothing that can be salvaged from the system. Pretty much every single police officer we have is guilty as sin of some kind of corruption. Yes, that includes General Mkhwanazi. He might not be as corrupt as Cyril Ramaphosa and them in this instance, but I guarantee you, if you actually had people looking into his life genuinely, they'd find massive corruption in his life. So the idea that we're saving this, I don't know. I genuinely don't. I just don't see it happening. Not anytime soon. I hope that answers your question to some extent. Unfortunately, there was a lot of international pressure for South Africa to give power to the ANC. Yes, and I think the international community does understand now that that may have been a mistake. And to be fair, when I say that it was a mistake for the international community to give power to the ANC, I am not suggesting that apartheid was a better system. I want to make that super clear. I recognize that there are some white people who dream of apartheid. I recognize that. I recognize that there are some people who believe apartheid was a better system. As a free market capitalist, I can never agree with that stance. Let's put race aside for a moment. I am a person that believes that the more people that can participate in the market, the better it is for everyone. So just on that basis, I cannot support a system like apartheid because you're automatically excluding a number of people from the market, which would not be good, right? Moreover, South Africa has a tiny population. Afrikaners have a tiny population of 5 million people, right? If you put Afrikaans and English people together, roughly 5 million people in the country. That is such a tiny group of people. 60 million is better. 5 million, yeah, you can be a fairly recently or decently rich country with 5 million people, but you can be so much richer with 60 million. So I like the idea of having an open society where everyone can participate in the market. I don't want to shut that down. But we have to be able to agree that the ANC is and has always been a terrorist organization. This isn't propaganda. This isn't just the world telling us a couple of stories. Nelson Mandela himself was one of the founders of Umkhonto weSizwe. He planted bombs in shopping malls, at sports stadiums, in bars, under cars. People in apartheid South Africa remember waking up and going to school in the mornings and having to check their cars to ensure that there weren't bombs planted under those cars. These were civilian targets. Umkhonto weSizwe had direct calls on the murder of farmers as part of their protest action. Umkhonto weSizwe necklaced black people. Necklaced thousands of black people. These were people who they just suspected of being collaborators or being traitors to the cause. Umkhonto weSizwe would burn down buildings of affluent black people, because if we're going to be arguing that we're suffering, we can't have black people actually thriving in this old South Africa. So we have to burn down the buildings of anyone that is even looking like they're making a bit of money. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. He wasn't some great saint. The most saintly thing that Nelson Mandela did do, and this I will give him, when he came to power in 1994, he did say, we will have reconciliation. He could have very easily said, we're going to kill all the whites. And what would the white people have been able to do about that, right? We would have had to go back to civil war, so South Africa would just have been another war zone. But he didn't do that. He said, we'll have reconciliation. That's great, right? That's a beautiful thing, but it does not negate the man that he was before prison and during prison. Because we know that even in prison, he was still giving the orders. He was still telling them what to bomb and where. The ANC themselves is an organization that includes all of these terrorist elements within it. This is a terrorist organization. This is not an organization that ever cared about black people, that ever cared about black people's prosperity. The evidence is clear for all to see with eyes. Let me put it to you this way. There's a famous thing in political science. If you want to know the purpose of a piece of political policy, don't listen to what the politicians tell you it does. Look at what it does. Because what it does was always what it was designed to do. That's it. Politicians will always tell you beautiful things. They will always tell you, oh, we have this plan and it's going to get a lot of people out of poverty. Oh, beautiful, beautiful plan. But then once it's implemented, what does it do? Because if it's not actually alleviating poverty, then it was never built to alleviate poverty. A famous example of this would be Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. You guys remember that? The famous Inflation Reduction Act. Anyone who had eyes could read the act and go, well, none of this actually will reduce inflation. In fact, a lot of the things that you just suggested will increase inflation, not reduce it. But of course, they called it the Inflation Reduction Act, so clearly it must be reducing inflation. The act went into effect, and almost immediately inflation started going up. Don't listen to what the politicians tell you. Look at what it does. So let's look at BE. BE tells us that it is meant to uplift and transform Black people in South Africa. What does it do? At the start, in 1994, the unemployment of Black people in South Africa is 16%. It is 33% today. At the start, the amount of Black people living on government grants from the ANC is around 4.5, almost 5 million. It's 27 million today, 30 years later. The economy is growing at around 4 to 5%. Today, we're celebrating 1% growth. Not real growth, just 1% growth. Real growth is minus about 1.3%, but in terms of the growth that they tell us we have, it's about 1%, right? That's what we're celebrating today. Black people are poorer today than what they were in 1994. White people are poorer today than what they were in 1994. Yes, Black unemployment has risen sharply, but so too has white unemployment. In fact, white unemployment has more than doubled since 1994. Doesn't matter where you look. The policies of the ANC have not achieved transformation. It has not uplifted Black people. It has not led to more Black people being rich or to the country being richer. It has led to the impoverishment of the people, Black people and white people alike. So don't listen to what they say. Politicians will always tell you that our plans are meant to make you rich. Look at what their plans produce. And their plans produce immense wealth destruction, not redistribution. There is no redistribution of wealth in South Africa. There is wealth destruction. The state takes, and then a handful of people get. And you know what? If there are Africans watching this, if there are Black people watching my stream, and I know I have a few Black people in my community, next time you're confronted by these communist-minded Black people, I want you to tell them about Nigeria. Before oil is discovered in Nigeria, the Nigerian economy is about $120 per person. That's the strength of the Nigerian economy. Then oil is discovered. Massive amounts of oil along the Strait of Niger. And every analyst is Nigeria is about to become the richest country in Africa. It has tons of oil. It is incredibly well situated. They're going to be rich, bro. The GDP per capita today in Nigeria is $90. You put inflation to the test there, that's bad. That's really bad. It means that it would have been better for Nigeria never to discover oil than what it was to discover oil. They have gotten poorer as a result of discovering black gold. Why? Now, The astute freedom fighters in our country will tell you, oh, colonialism. It's the colonials that took everything. No, most of it's nationalized. The government owns most of it. Well, I say the government. What I mean to say is the government plus about 1% of the population caters. Nigeria, just like South Africa, has a bunch of caters that all feed on the oil money, meaning that the real money never actually gets to the people. This is South Africa's curse. This is Nigeria's curse. This is Africa's curse. In the whole of Africa, you will find this over and over and over again. The leaders have a number of people around them, and these people get fat at the expense of the people. Don't listen to what the politicians tell you BEE does, or employment equity, or affirmative action. Look at what it does. Because what it does is making you poor. It's as simple as that. MILC, how you doing, brother? Mr. Joy, it's so high. One can't get over it, and it's so low that one cannot get under it to be so low in the sun. How you doing, Philip? They had kids, as there were work and money in their households and hospitals that worked back then. It was to enrich the carers. I got grass, lots of grass. They get into power and chow all the money. True. How did the Mandela get an apartheid, and all the top ANC got this in apartheid times? Alan, so yes, there's a number of things. There are intricacies around apartheid. I will be the first to grant that, right? No one denies that apartheid isn't just a bog standard, straightforward system. But the very idea that you're going to exclude people based on the color of their skin makes no sense to me. That makes no sense. Because if we are going to argue that actually apartheid was good, then there is nothing wrong with what the ANC is doing today. The ANC excluding white people based on the color of their skin, it is their prerogative to do so. They won the war. They got the country. There's no... if we think that what happened under apartheid was good, then why is it bad for the ANC to do it? Is it bad only because now it's happening to us? We are now living in apartheid, the same way that we were living under apartheid 30 years ago. It's just reversed. It's just flipped. Both are bad. I don't want either of these systems. I want a system where a person can genuinely go out and do what they need to do without their skin color ever being a thing. If you can dream it, go do it. More power to you. See how far you get. That's what I want. I want a country where I'm not looking and going, oh, look at that black business owner. I wonder how many government contracts he got in order to own that business. I want a country where I can look at a black business owner and say, man, look at the business that guy built. Right? That would be the country that I would be dreaming of. And yes, whether that come through separate states, whether that come through a federalized system, that doesn't matter much to me, because that's just a governmental system. We can figure that out later. But fundamentally, that is the system that I would dream about. I don't want to live in a system where race is a determining factor, but I also don't want to take anyone else's rights away from being able to live in that system. That's why I believe separate states is the answer. If you want to live in a state where you only allow people from one skin color into that state, you should be allowed to do that. And I will fight like hell to preserve your right to determine only white people live here, only black people live here, and that's how you want to live. You should be allowed to do that. There's no one in the world that can tell you that that's wrong. That's your choice, and you should be allowed to do so. I just don't want to live there. I'll fight so that you can get that state. Trust me. I will fight alongside you in order to establish that state for you. I will just go live in a state where the people think the way that I do. I want capitalists and people who care about freedom next to me. Freedom as I determine it. couldn't care less about their skin color. Like, their skin color has no effect on me. Racism is the one thing that I don't have, right? I don't have a problem with people of different skin colors because I have met enough terrible white people and enough great black people to know that skin color isn't really a determinant when it comes to good or bad people. So yeah, but again, I support your right. If that is what you want, you should have that. And I will fight for you to have that. Because I think it matters. I think people should be allowed to live as they see fit without judgment, because it's not about being judged, right? It's not about good or bad. It's about it's about what you think you want for your future and for the future of your kids. That's it. Just say it. You're like me. We identify as South African. No one can beat that argument. I am South African, right? But I'm also an Afrikaner, and I'm proud of being an Afrikaner. Just to be very clear here, Artsok, I am very proud of my Afrikaner heritage. I'm proud of my language. I'm proud of being Afrikaans. I have no problem with that, right? But I'm also a South African. But I don't even necessarily view myself as a quote-unquote South African. I view myself as a Christian first. I'm a Christian first. I'm a follower of Christ first. That's the number one thing for me. Secondly, I'm a capitalist. I believe in the free market and the free movement of ideas and services and goods. So those are the two things that my entire system is built. I'm a nationalist. Therefore, I believe that a government's job is to serve its nation. Those are the three things that I am. Everything else, for me, is attachments. But they're not the three main things that I hold. How free do you like your market? Cybertoast, as free as it can be? How do I phrase this? As free as is humanly possible, provided we stall the creation of monopolies. So I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist, because I think laissez-faire capitalism, no matter what we do, it always runs into the same problem. You end up with one company controlling everything. So I do believe that the government has a role in the market. I believe the government's role in the market, however, is to stop monopolies from existing. Not to determine winners or losers, not to decide who gets the contract and who doesn't, but specifically to focus on stopping monopolies. That's the most important element that government can do. And then passing regulation and legislation to allow for other companies to compete in order to stop monopolies from existing. Esteem, it's on top because it's based. Cybertoast, so I get your argument, and it's a very libertarian argument, and I used to follow that exact same argument, but we have multiple data sets now that's been run through AI thousands of times, using every known modifier you can imagine. The one truth that plays itself out every single time in laissez-faire capitalism is one company ends up owning everything. Always. No matter what happens, no matter how much competition they introduce, no matter how they change the education system, doesn't matter what they do, eventually one company ends up owning everything. You give it enough time, one company ends up owning everything. And there's a reason. You can think about this logically. When you have a complete laissez-faire capitalist system, you are always going to have one group of people that genuinely just want to provide services and do business, right? That's all they want to do. On the other hand, you have corrupt people that want power. They're not necessarily stealing, but they are corrupt. They want maximum power. And those who are corrupt always work harder than those that just want to survive. And so slowly but surely, they will utilize the market in order to gain control of the market. And eventually, they'll take over. And when they take over, they will no longer be benevolent. They will then crack down because you have given them the power to do so. So, laissez-faire capitalism, unless someone can bring me a model of laissez-faire capitalism that ultimately allows for a free market and competition without end, I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist. I am begrudgingly willing to admit that government needs to regulate so that monopolies don't become a thing. But it is begrudgingly, because personally, I would prefer if no government was involved, but I also know that monopolies can be really, really bad. And so government should try and stop that as much as possible. In case you don't know, they are following the fake revelations chapter. Natasha, how are you doing? What fake revelations chapter? Hearing someone saying Christian before Afrikaner. Thanks, bud, from a fellow Afrikaner. You're more than welcome, Quiz. Okay, so next story. And this is this was originally going to be the story that I wanted to cover for the live stream today. And then the allegations around the Mkhonazi Matlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee and all the rest of that happened. And so I was like, okay, fine. I'll cover that story first, and then we'll talk about this. Now, the alarm bells that's ringing for the Rand, I just found this article and I found it super funny that I wanted to talk about this and it also happens to be this. And it's actually not wrong, Heartsock. Daily Investor really is Daily Crisis because they are a bit more of a, I want to say slop media. I mean, in as much as News 24 and Daily Maverick aren't slop, they're still slop. But, Daily Investor sort of does every single day. They have this sort of huge story about just the next big bad thing happening in the country. But I found the headline nice, and so I put it up because it fits with what I wanted to talk about originally, even before seeing this article. So you guys know what's happening in Iran. You know about the war in Iran because we've covered the war in Iran. Scribble, thank you so much for the 70 Rand, dude. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Parsifal, we'll talk about that in a second because I'm not sure if you're saying I don't know what anarchistic means. We can talk about anarchism in a second, right? Because I used to be an anarchist. So we can talk about that in a second. Let me finish this story and then I'll get to anarchism and all the rest of it. I promise. And also, Scribble, Monoptic Studios stands with Israel. Scribble, happy to have you here, bro. Thank you so much for the $70 donation. Thank you. Okay, so in Iran, we have the Middle East. We have Israel and Trump or America attacking Iran. Now, again, let me make one thing super, super clear. I am on the side of America because I believe that a world without the Ayatollahs and the Muslim regime of Iran is a better world. Simple as. I don't care what you have to say about Israel's war, not Israel's war, America. I don't care about any of that. I have a very simple political philosophy around this. I don't like Muslim terrorist regimes in power. Simple as that. And if it means America has to bomb the entire government out of existence, okay. One less Muslim terrorist in the world, that's a good thing in my book. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to apologize for that. You're not going to get that apology. I'll apologize for the fact that I won't apologize because it is still mean. I realize I'm hurting a lot of feelings because there's a lot of people who genuinely care about the terrorist dictators and regime of Iran and really feel tears welling up when they think of this regime no longer being able to kill tens of thousands of their own people. I recognize this is a sad, sad day for all of you, But I personally think that when a government starts to kill tens of thousands of their own people, you've sort of lost the right to life, anyways. And so that bomb, as far as I'm concerned, that's a righteous bomb. And I hope that you feel every iota of pain as that bomb consumes you. Fair? Fair. Theo, thank you so much for the 14 Rand donation, dude. Really appreciate you. Thank you. You're far too kind. But okay, so the war happens. Oil prices are out of control. It's insanity. The whole world is teetering on the brink. Yesterday I made a video where I said that South Africa's own economy is in serious trouble. We're looking at about 5 to 6 Rand increase per liter of petrol and over 9 Rand increase per liter for diesel. This is bad because from that flows inflation. We have problems with nitro fertilizers. We have problems with other refined products that we get from the Strait of Hormuz. We have medication problems because, yes, oil is used in a lot of medications. So there's like a bunch of things that the South African economy cannot handle as a result. You can watch that video because I highlighted pretty well in that video. And then yesterday, this happens. This was last night, or earlier this morning. President Donald Trump posts the following over on Truth Social. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which is spelled wrongly, but I think the intern that wrote this probably, it's late, will continue throughout the week. I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period. Subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions, thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, the Iranians have already come out and disputed this, saying we did absolutely not have peace negotiations with America. I wouldn't be so quick to accept that. And Louis, I'm not entirely sure if it's Louis or Luis. I have an aunt that's called Louise, so I'm just going to go with Louis. But thank you so much for the 115 Rand donation. I truly appreciate you. And for a cup of coffee, you're far too kind, sir. Thank you. The Iranians might just be grandstanding here. So I want to make that super clear. The Iranians have a long history of saying one thing in public and then doing something completely different in private. And one of the key reasons for that is the Iranians will always signal power to the world rather than weakness. Because the Iranian regime isn't as powerful as people might think. The Iranian regime, the only way that they get to control Iran is by looking powerful. Because there are many different interest groups in Iran that would, at the first hint of weakness, start challenging the Iranian regime for power. And so from the Iranian perspective, it's always important to look powerful, even if you are not. Right? Like, even if you're not, then just look it. So it is entirely possible that the Iranians and the Americans are indeed having peace talks. And the Iranians are indeed begging President Trump to stop the hostilities and allow them to get back. I'm going to have a conversation a bit later on, giving you my geopolitical take on this. But for now, what do you need to know? Well, you need to know that crude oil has come down significantly. Right? So at its height, we were around over $100 for crude oil. It has come down to around $90 per barrel, just as a result of the immediate effect here. It's still higher than what it was before the war started. We were going to 60. We're probably going to go below 60, maybe even below 50. So we're still much higher than what we were at the start of the war. So we're still going to see petrol increases. That's still going to happen, but most likely not at the catastrophic levels that we were expecting to see yesterday. because obviously the markets are also looking a lot better. What isn't looking better is commodity prices. Commodity prices continue to go down. They're continuing to edge down further and further. Gold is already on a weekly decline of about 11%, a monthly decline of about 14%. Silver is down 11% and 21%. Copper is down 6% and 10%. Why am I saying this? Why am I telling you this? Because this is really bad. This is really, really bad. You remember a while ago, the South African politicians were all going on and on about the green shoots of the economy. Well, as I've said for months now, there are no green shoots to the South African economy. Those green shoots has never existed. The green shoots of our economy was based on two factors. The one was a weakening, an intentional weakening of the US dollar, and two, rising commodity prices. South Africa is the world's largest exporter of gold. So when gold went up to over $5,000 an ounce, that's good, right? And that means that the South African economy gets to bank on a lot of this. We have a ton of silver, a ton of copper, a ton of steel, lithium, not that much, but we do have some platinum, where we literally sit on the largest reserves of platinum in the world. So as all of these things spike upwards, South Africa gets good, right? Things are going well for the South African economy. So these are the two factors that actually allowed things to look as if they're getting better. And of course, Steenhuisen and Ramaphosa and all of the ministers in the GNU touted this as the GNU's success. Just look at how good we are, guys, at fixing everything for you. One of the reasons why I hated it and I kept saying this is nonsense, don't believe this, is because you can, for us to look at an economy and say, is it doing better? Is it doing worse? We first have to understand, why is the economy not growing? The South African economy isn't growing because of two main factors. The first is we have one of the most regulated states in the world. Our government regulates absolutely everything to the max. We have had almost no new mines open up in South Africa in the last decade. Businesses don't open up. Factories don't really open up. We have seen almost zero small businesses turn into medium businesses, turning into large businesses in this country in the last 2 decades. That just hasn't happened. And sorry, I just remembered a third that I wanted to add into this. High energy costs, again, thanks to corrupt and inept governance. Energy costs in South Africa makes it so that to build a factory here isn't worthwhile. It's too expensive to operate. And then lastly, criminality. There's way too much crime in this country. And as a result of this, you're never going to get the foreign direct investments you require in order to see economic growth. Those are the three reasons the South African economy is failing. When the president and Steenhuisen and all the rest of them started to tout the green shoots of our economy, I went and I looked at those three factors, because those are the reasons we're poor. So one of these three things has to change in order for us to no longer be poor, right? Well, none of those three things have changed. We're still the most regulated state, one of the most regulated states in the world. No regulation has been removed. We're still a criminal hotspot for basically cartels and evil mob bosses around the world. And we still have incredibly high energy costs. So if none of the underlying foundations that would lead to economic growth exists, why the hell would anyone believe that economic growth does in fact exist? The answer is it does not exist. The South African economy is struggling. Now, here's where the warning comes in, and why you and I should be very afraid. What this catastrophe in Iran, because right now it looks as if we're out of the woods. The war has cooled down. Maybe they can reach a point of peace, so we don't have a problem, right? The economy isn't going to go into an absolute meltdown at the beginning of next month. But what this signals to us is that our economy has become a complete vassal state of international affairs. Our economy no longer moves by its own weight. It moves only in relation to what happens internationally. Our currency can't grow stronger by itself. It can only grow stronger if the dollar grows weaker. So we have lost control of our monetary system. Our monetary system is now in the hands of international people and international forces. Our energy costs are completely tied to international events. Shut down the international stage, and South Africa has no energy and no way of getting new energy. And then criminality is out of control and growing because our government is part of a terrorist network around the world. And they're allowing other terrorist networks to find a home here in South Africa. This should worry every single ordinary South African because it means that with every cough that the world takes, South Africa gets a cold. Every single time something changes, every single time something happens in the world, South Africa is just a complete slave to it. Our economy will go down with the rest of the world. It'll go up, but not by nearly as much because it seems to disconnect the second things go really well. And there's a reason for it because the ANC stands in the path of progress. But it scares me. We came dangerously close. And by the way, if this reverses, if suddenly in 5 days from now, President Trump announces that the war is back on, these prices will explode again. Crude oil will go right back to $120, $130 a barrel. But right now, we escaped narrowly the complete and utter eradication of the South African experiment. The economy would have been in tatters by the end of this. And we were powerless to do anything about it. There's literally nothing that we as South Africans could do to stave off the coming destruction. Our government doesn't have the fuel reserves to actually hold up the country. We don't have the refineries to actually turn what crude we do import from Nigeria, Uganda, and those countries into anything of value. So we were powerless. There was nothing that we could do. We would have been sitting ducks. And I think the thing that drives me insane the most is that of all of the things that's happening, nothing seems to wake up the ANC. Nothing. It is a government that runs primarily on hopes and dreams. The hope and the dream that things won't go wrong. What the hell do you do with that? I genuinely don't know. I wonder if SA has a lot of oil reserves that they just haven't discovered yet. Rave, how you doing, sir? So there's rumors of a lot of offshore oil just off the west coast because a lot of oil has been discovered off the coast of Namibia. And because those coasts are relatively close by, there are at least rumors that there might be a bunch of oil there. But even if there isn't oil, so to speak, in South Africa has two things in absolute abundance, right? Yeah, but Hartzog, we're talking about oil reserves that can actually be utilized and is worth it. Because there's plenty of places that have oil, but it stems from a sort of thinking, we need to be able to tap into this vein for the next 50 years, right? And then there needs to be expansion. Because remember, you're not just setting up one oil rig, you're setting up an entire ecosystem of pipelines and things that have to take place. So if there's a tiny little oil field that maybe can house 10 or 15 oil rigs, and that's all you're going to get, most companies are not going to waste their time. They're going to be like, this isn't worth our time here. This is just too small, at least for us. So, you need significant oil to actually justify the investment that it would take for you to invest. So, in that regard, South Africa has a lot of rumored oil off the coast. But even if you exclude that oil, because it is rumored, you'd need to actually get down and start drilling and see how much pressure are you actually dealing here. But even if you were to exclude all of that, South Africa sits on some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. We have insane reserves of natural gas. Our natural gas can very easily be refined into petroleum products the same way the US does, because the vast majority of oil that comes from the US, not vast majority, but a lot of oil in the US is actually gas to oil, right? Which we could do too. There's no reason why we can't take natural gas and turn that into a synthetic fuel. And then we have a crap ton of coal, which we could do exactly the same thing for, right? We used to do it. We still do it, but it's been so run down that there's almost nothing left of Sasol. But we used to take coal and turn that into fuel. We can do that again. We have some of the highest grade coal in the world, and we essentially sit on infinite reserves of the stuff. Just everywhere they look, they're finding new veins, even untapped veins that's never even been dug into. We have so much coal that we could probably have enough fuel for the whole country if we upgraded our. Now, technically, you don't want to do that because coal has other uses, which is not as wasteful as turning it into actual biofuel. But still, there are ways in which we can do this, but none of this ever happens. None of this ever happens because the ANC just keeps stealing everything. Like, everything just keeps going. My state in the US does a lot of coal. Lucids, yeah. In South Africa, it's Mpumalanga on the other side of the country from where I am, which makes it all the more frustrating. The determining, I agree with you, it is beyond frustrating. Christian, how are you doing, sir? Are we the people of South Africa immoral if we don't do everything we can to get them out of power? Christian, no, I don't think that's how I would. I mean, immorality is something very specific, right? I wouldn't call that immorality, nor would I even say that it's wrong. Look, at the end of the day, I don't blame people for reaching a point of just going, man, what's the point? My vote is going to make no difference. And so I'm not even going to waste my time. I don't blame people for that because it stands to reason that those people aren't entirely wrong. Right? And moreover, there are genuinely just people. And you know what? This might be an interesting conversation to have. Everywhere, all the time, you hear people saying, you should vote. You should vote. You should vote. Voting is a right. It's a privilege. You should vote. Everyone should vote. Go out and register to vote. I have a problem with that. Insofar as I know people who couldn't care less about politics. They know nothing of politics. Literally nothing. And my question is, should that person actually vote? Do I want a guy that the last time they've heard of politics was when the National Party was in power? Should I want that guy to actually vote? Should I want a person that lives in the townships that has no real world experience, no workable political experience whatsoever, actually vote? That person is under no circumstances going to make a good decision. Ever. This is one of the reasons I don't believe in democracy. This is one of the reasons I think democracy is a complete failure of a system. Ferorius, how are you doing, sir? Because democracy gives to power to imbeciles to destroy everyone else's lives. Because in a democracy, the most stupid people have the most power. And by stupid, I don't mean people who are genuinely unintelligent. I mean people who are just politically stupid. They don't know anything about politics, and so they don't even know who to vote for because they don't know what these people even stand for. A great example, I watched this video yesterday. You know, these guys that go around towns and ask people political questions. This particular guy went around, I believe it was San Francisco, and he read people Trump's economic plan. He read them, every single thing that Trump wants to do economically. But he told them that this is Bernie Sanders' plan, right? That he wants to enact, and they want to know how people feel about this. Every single person that heard the plan went, this is an amazing plan. This is an amazing plan. Bernie Sanders should do it. And then they find out, oh, this is actually President Trump's plan. And almost to a T, they were all, you could see, no longer that hot on the plan. Suddenly, the plan wasn't quite as good. Why is that? I mean, the plan is still the plan. You thought it was a great plan. It's because they're too stupid to know whether it is a good plan or not. What carried way more weight than the plan was the fact that Bernie Sanders suggested it. What was in the plan was of no concern to these people because they're too stupid to even know what it means. And look, I'll be the first to acknowledge, economics is hard. Economics is insanely difficult because understanding the relationship between certain things that happen and how those unintended consequences impact you much later down the road, it's incredibly difficult. And there's economists that spend their entire lives trying to make sense of it. So it's not easy. And yet, for some reason, we're asking ordinary plebs to vote and decide who gets to run the country. This has never made sense to me. I don't believe that everyone should get a vote. I don't believe in the concept of one man, one vote. Because what's the worth of that man that he gets to vote? You guys know my opinions on the rest of it. I believe if you don't pay taxes, you don't get to vote. That's as simple as it is. If you're under the age of 35, you don't get to vote. Simple as that. You know, and yeah, I personally, I don't understand the whole push to get everyone to vote because most people who vote are stupid. They should not be voting in the first place. Scribble with the 70 Rand donation. Really appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Exactly. Democracy is a single market segment they use to control everyone. It doesn't make sense. Star Marines and eyes. I agree with you, Scribble. Homelands and all chose their leader, and all leaders represent we the people. I would actually go so far as to say I'm more in favor of kings than I am of democracy. Very sad to hear about the lawyer that got killed. Oh yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but it is probably something that we should just sort of this morning. I believe it was this morning, right? A lawyer coming out of a labor dispute with. She was representing a mine, I believe, in a labor dispute, was killed as she got out of her car, gunned down. And at least according to early reports, this was an organized hit. That's the country we live in now, guys. We live in a country where political violence is becoming ever more real. It's becoming an ever bigger reality, and no one seems to care much. No one seems to pay much attention. Oh, yeah, okay, on Monday, sorry. Yeah, I saw it this morning, but I wasn't aware of when exactly it happened. But I saw it this morning. Nobody knows how economics work. I wouldn't say nobody knows. We have decent or reasonable ideas about how economics functions, insofar as we can broadly predict certain things to happen, right? But again, we can only predict those things because we've seen it happen millions of times before in that exact way. James of House Bond, how you doing, sir? Um, so yeah, we'll see. Um, Yeah, we're definitely heading to some very awkward things. I quickly want to find there's another story I wanted to share with all of you. Okay. So, you guys remember the march that happened around, was it Sunday? I think it was Sunday. No, 20 Saturday. The march that happened on Saturday, the People's March, right? The march where the people was going to tell President Trump that we do not bend to we do not bend to your words and you don't get to attack us. Well, I've been saying for quite some time now. Can march. We are allowed. This thing's broken as hell. Let's just quickly get this thing sorted because no. Sorry, my browser is frozen. I don't know why it does this. Super annoying. There we go. Anyone? I think I fixed it. Hold up. Let's just quickly just clear a bit out here. All right, here we go. So the clip. Look for the SACP flag. Crazy stuff. Okay, so before we get into this clip, I just want to say a couple of things. So the march that happened on Saturday, the 21st, this march for democracy, this march against America, this was a peculiar set of circumstances. The march itself achieved almost nothing. That's the weirdest thing about this. So the march actually ultimately culminates, and if I can show you guys this very quickly, the march culminates in this moment, where Fikile Mbalula, the leader of the march, hands over a piece of paper to the minister, actually the deputy minister, that allows the deputy minister then to just give me a second. Wil extreme gou. Ja, ek sal. Okay, right. That allows that tells the minister that the ANC decided that they will not be bullied. So effectively, the ANC handed a document to the ANC to confirm to the ANC that the ANC will not be bullied by America. That's the whole point of the march. That was it. So an interesting question has to arise from this. Why? Why the march? What exactly is it that you were hoping to achieve as a result of this march? Now, I have already told you what I think the ANC is up to. And this is the same thing that every terrorist regime in the world is pretty much always up to. When times start to get tough, when sort of there's more pressure than what the regime can handle, the first thing the regime needs to start establishing is authority. The regime has to make sure that everyone in the country knows that they are the authority. And when you actually look at Secretary General Fikile Mbalula and you look at his timeline, this is the stuff he shared, right? His entire timeline is full of the pictures of all the thousands of cadres that showed up to go march at this thing. So this is super important. This is what terrorist regimes do. They look for authority, and the next thing they of course do is this lays the groundwork so that when they start enacting more oppressive policies, those policies are seen as legitimate because the people is behind the policies. So it gives them the ability to hide behind international law. They are merely enacting the will of the people. Look at how the people march. This is what the people want. Now, this is my warning pretty much to every single South African content creator, South African interest group, Afrikaner interest group, white interest group. There's some bad stuff on the horizon. There's some stuff that's going to be happening, I believe, in the very near term in South Africa that is not going to be pretty. Just take a listen to this.
Anyone who wants to march in the country can march. We are allowed to do so. What is wrong is when white Afrikaners who become the new fur draggers go to the United States of America and go and badmouth their own country. That is very wrong. And in Parliament, we have said we must look at the possibility of introducing a law that will make it treasonous for anyone to go to another country and trample on the rights of the other people in the Constitution.
Did you guys hear what he said there? They're looking at making and passing a law that will make it treasonous for anyone to go to another country and trample on the rights of the other people in the country. No one trampled on the rights of anyone. The Afrikaner delegations going to President Trump wasn't trampling on the rights of ordinary South Africans. But now remember what is the number one right, according to our president and according to the ANC in our constitution. Dignity of the people. See, and so when the Afrikaners went to President Trump and said, hey, what's happening to us here isn't fair, the ANC could reasonably market that as trampling on the dignity of black people and their right to murder white people, their right to oppress white people, their right to discriminate against white people because of some historical gripe that they have with white people. Never mind the fact that white people are the ones being discriminated against. Never mind the fact that white people are the ones being persecuted. Never mind the fact that white people are the ones being slaughtered and murdered by the black majority. No. That's not the issue here. Right? White people are not allowed to complain to other countries about the stuff that's happening to them here in South Africa. The ANC was going to every country that would have them during apartheid and complaining to every single one of those countries. This was the very way in which the ANC was able to sway the populations of the world against the apartheid government. And now the ANC is saying, no. No, you will not. And yes, Voya, seriously, because of some historical gripe. There's nothing wrong with what I'm saying. Your issue with white people is based on a history that you did not even live in. It's a history that no longer exists. Apartheid is dead. It has been dead for 30 years. Your hatred of white people is completely manufactured. You have taken every single failing of yourselves and placed it upon white people. Every single time you and your government make a mistake and screw up the country, white people. Every single time the ANC destroys another sector within this economy, white people. It must be the white people. It must be apartheid. We don't have enough water. It's the white people. They didn't build enough dams. Never mind the fact that you could build your own dams. We don't have electricity. It must be the white people at some point. Don't know exactly how apartheid is involved, but apartheid must be involved. Every single time we hear of black people being poorer than what they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, it must be apartheid. It's always apartheid's fault. It's never yours. There's a name for people like you. It's called victims. Victims do that. It's always someone else's fault. You can never take responsibility for your own actions. You can never be held accountable for the things that you've done wrong because it must be someone else's mistake. You know what's one truth about victims? They die victims. Because it's never your own mistake. There's no way for you to fix it. Because what can you fix? The only solution is someone else has to take care of you. And if no one else wants to take care of you, then you just die in poverty. Because what else is there? The people that you've chosen to represent you, they don't care about you. The ANC couldn't care less about the black people of this country. The EFF, the MK, they could not care less about the black people of this country. Because if there's one thing that victims need, it's saviors. And if there's one thing that saviors need, it's victims. And so a savior has a vested interest in ensuring that the victim remains the victim. None of those people want to save you. I don't want to save you. I'll be very honest with you. Whenever I see messages of people saying white people won't partner with us to fix the country, I go, damn right. I will not partner with you. I don't want to save you. I want to help you save yourself. That's your responsibility, it's not mine. And how will I help you save yourself? By leaving you the hell alone. To get on with it. Do your own thing. Fix your own life. Of course, not just talking to you specifically. I'm talking more generally, more broadly. But it is annoying. It's annoying as a white person, constantly hearing how we are to blame for all of the flaws and mistakes in this country, and yet we are not in power. We are not the ones in power. We have not been in power for 30 years. How is it still our fault? Especially given the fact that we can point to all of the mistakes that the ANC made. Like, we can point to their mistakes and go, this is where they made mistakes. Because they were warned ahead of time. We told them, this is wrong. And to be fair, this isn't even a cultural thing. This isn't a racial thing either. Because the black people in South Africa, and not all black people, let's be very clear, because there are black people who hate this victimhood bullshit just as much as everyone else. And excuse my French. Because you can see the exact same thing happening to leftists in America, and they're white as snow. What's the common thread between a leftist in America and a progressive freedom fighter in South Africa? What's the common thread? What do both of these groups have in common? Marxism, sure, but Marxism is an extension of it. Marxism is a symptom, it's not the disease. The disease is victimhood. Neither of these groups can fix their own problems. Everything that has ever gone wrong with them is the result of someone else. Someone did this to me, Now I need someone to save me from the thing that's been done to me. I am incapable of saving myself. And so now we grab to communism, we grab to socialism, we grab to victimhood status because something needs to save us. We can't save ourselves. We're victims. So it's not racial because leftists in America, leftists in Europe, leftist freedom fighters in South Africa and in Africa, they all share this one common trait. The failures are never ours. The failures belong to everyone else. Everyone else is at fault for the things that's happened to us. And I'm sick and tired of it. Because I'm sorry, but I do not take any guilt for the stuff that happened under apartheid. I wasn't alive then. I had nothing to do with it. And I refuse to accept generational guilt. I will not accept guilt for something that I wasn't a part of. So if you want to say I should feel guilty because apartheid, I'm just going to say no, I don't really care. I genuinely don't. Because I didn't live then. Do I want apartheid back? No. We just discussed that like literally an hour ago. We discussed my feelings around apartheid. I don't like apartheid. I think apartheid was a terrible system. And not even because of racial reasons. Like, I think the racial reasons are abhorrent, to be fair. But that's not why I hate apartheid. I told you guys. I hate apartheid because it's a stupid business decision. If you want to make money, more customers is more better. So why would you exclude 55 million people from the market when more customers is more better? I don't understand that. The logic doesn't track for me. And so I don't like apartheid because it makes no common sense. It's a stupid system, as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, if you want to live in an apartheid state, I'll support that right. You should have the right. If you're a Zulu and you just want to live with other Zulus, you should have the right to live with other Zulus. If you're an Afrikaner and you just want to live with other Afrikaners, you should have the right to do so. And I will fight for your right to do all of that. I will fight for the Zulu to have their homeland. I will fight for the Afrikaner to have their homeland. I'll fight for the English to go back to England. I'll fight for all of that. But fundamentally, I just want to live with people that care about capitalism, care about Christianity, and that's it, right? Provided you're a Christian and you care about capitalism, I want to live with you. And everything else is sort of, I think, just add-ons. Fanatic, thank you so much for the $2, 2 Australian dollars, 99 cents. Really appreciate you, sir. Thank you. De Klerk warned the global community of this ANC. Many people warned of the ANC. I feel like I missed someone's donation. Did I not? I responded to everyone's donations, right? Sorry, guys. Well, I get a little passionate sometimes in my responses, and then I can miss things that you guys donate. So please excuse me. Please forgive me for that. I get quite passionate about this stuff because I genuinely want, Kimmy, how you doing? I genuinely want this country to succeed, man. I want our country to do better, and I know it can. I know that it can be better. I know that we can save this country, and I know that South Africa has the ability to be one of the most powerful nations on earth. There is no reason why we can't be America's most important trading partner. No reason. If you look at America and you look at South Africa, the only difference between South Africa and America is population size. We don't have the population yet. But in terms of resources, in terms of people, in terms of land mass, in terms of location, dude, we could be insanely powerful. There's literally almost nothing that we can't do because, like America, we could be a world in one nation, meaning we could effectively operate without the rest of the world. Imagine if we had that kind of government that could go to President Trump tomorrow and say, hey, we are like you, a nation that doesn't need the world in order to flourish. Let's partner. We will control Africa and our backyard, and we will trade with you and allow you to control your backyard. President Trump would jump at the idea of that. President Trump would be insanely happy to see South Africa step up to the plate and say, look, we can do it, right? We can do this. But no, we have a government that just looks to steal more money. The concept of apartheid had logic until it was infiltrated by some of your evil ancestors. We're definitely not victims, and most blacks are as frustrated as you are about our current administration. Well, so I'll grant you, my father used to tell me stories of what he termed apartheid, and then he had a term called little apartheid. And he called it little apartheid because he said that at the time there were these two different types of apartheid. Right? There was the official apartheid, and then there was the things people did. Now, I will grant you that the official apartheid made logical sense. You have all of these different groups in the country that don't naturally live together. The Xhosa and the Zulu doesn't naturally get along. The Sepedi and the Venda doesn't naturally get along, right? These are um, these are sort of all over the place, right? And every single one of these groups have a history of slaughtering and killing each other at various points in history. So it kind of made sense. Let every single group just go by themselves and do their own thing. But then, yes, as with all systems, you're gonna have corrupt people that step in and make take advantage of the system. That's always gonna happen. Like, no system, and this is one of the other reasons why a system like apartheid can't ever truly exist, because you're always gonna have the corrupt working harder than the normal people, right? Corrupt people always work harder than normal people. And so it's important to acknowledge that there were some bad people during apartheid that did some really bad shit during apartheid. But there were also the majority of people that weren't doing bad stuff, right? That were just living their lives under this system. Some people agreed with the system, some people didn't, but not everyone was doing evil stuff on either side, because you had the same kind of evil stuff happening with the ANC and Mkhonto Sizwe and a number of the freedom fighters there that necklaced and killed and slaughtered black people as well as white people. So you had this evil sort of thing happening on both sides. The question is, what do we do moving forward? Right? If we want to go back to that system, we can. Right? If you guys want to go back to apartheid, we could probably give it another whirl, see how well that goes. I can already foresee serious problems. Like, what exactly do we do with women and men who married each other across racial lines? Who lives where? What happens to the kids? Maybe the coloreds also need to get their own apartheid state, but I don't see the whites or the blacks really agreeing to that, because under apartheid, the coloreds weren't white enough. Now, under new apartheid, they're not black enough. So, the coloreds are probably just gonna, have to. I don't know where they're going. So, the thing is, when you start talking about the logistics of bringing apartheid back, it just doesn't make sense. Right? It's just, no one really cares. There's people who will say things like the good old days, but usually what they refer to is like one element of apartheid. Like I will give you this. You speak to ordinary people. Um, you speak to ordinary people and the things that they remember about apartheid. And one thing that most people say is safety. You could leave your house unlocked. In most neighborhoods, you could walk outside at 12 o'clock at night. Your kids' bicycles could lay in the street and no one would steal them. High trust society was something that a lot of people were sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Used to. It was a society with high trust. And I think if you asked most people, people who tell you they miss the good old days, I think that's the thing that they want. I think most people that say they want apartheid back don't really want the race laws or, the all of it back. They just want that. Most people want to be able to go outside at night and not think I'm about to get killed. And let's be real, that is a reality in South Africa. I find myself constantly picking up on things that I do that I realize isn't normal. Stopping at a robot traffic light for my international viewers and constantly looking in the mirrors. If you see one of these homeless people walking up to your car, you almost get this adrenaline spike because you're immediately thinking, is this just a homeless guy or does he want to do something? Um, Walking in to your house and checking the doors, checking the windows before you go to bed, making sure that everything is locked up tight, the gates and the doors and the windows. And these are not normal things. This is not how people are supposed to live. It's not supposed to take me 2 minutes to get out of my house because I need to unlock so many gates just to get out. Right? That's not normal. Our kids shouldn't be confined to their backyards because it's too dangerous outside. This isn't normal. And yet, this is where we live, you know? Creates horrible internal feelings. The funny thing, Kimmy, is that most of us don't even realize it. So I spoke to a number of people who works with refugees from South Africa to America. There's apparently a ton of refugees that are diagnosed with PTSD. They didn't even know. They did not know that they had PTSD. It's only once they arrived in America and, spoke to a therapist that went, wait, this isn't normal. The things that you're going through, the way you're dealing with this isn't normal, right? Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of South Africans just have PTSD. We just don't know it because for us, this is just how it is. I worked on cruise ships sailing out of Port, wait, Canaveral for 14 years. Loved it, but got sick and had to stop. Barry, how you doing, bro? Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is not. Dude, the only people who say Israel is an apartheid state are people who don't know anything about apartheid. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you know anything about Israel or Palestine? They're not the same country. Israel is its own country. It is under no obligation to give the Palestinian state anything. Like, what are you talking about? Um, Argentino's land. Super Aguero. Aguero. That's crazy. I never knew that. The more you learn, I suppose. I haven't met any South Africans yet in the US. I know there's tons, but even outside of the refugee thing, there are tons. Um, Blacks need to deal with their inferiority complex and find a common thread. I actually am inclined to agree with you, Voyo, but not necessarily inferiority complex. Um, Blacks need to realize that victimhood only has power over you as long as you allow it to have. And that it starts with taking responsibility for your own actions. Here's the truth. After the Second Boer War, the Afrikaner population that was left was decimated. We were nearly genocided. Well, we were, by all accounts, we were genocided. The English managed to kill tens of thousands of women and children in the concentration camps. So there was very, very little left of the Afrikaner people. And the Afrikaner people, being poor and destitute, their farms being destroyed thanks to the scorched earth policies of the British, stood up. They stood up. They started working. They worked harder than anyone else. And within 20 years, they had managed to rebuild a society from ashes. Why did they do that? Well, they did that because at the time, if you were to go to the British Empire and demand reparations, they would have laughed at you. They're saying, well, no, we won. You started the war. We just ended it, right? So there were no handouts. There were no aid packages that was being sent to different nations. Back then, if you wanted to stand up, you just had to stand up. And you had to do it mostly by yourself. I think once black people in South Africa realize that you and you alone are responsible for your future, and your actions now will determine your future, I think that will be the turning point. And you see it in some black people. I have black friends. I have black people I go to church with. Amazing people. The one guy, and I won't name names, but he's not rich, right? He's not rich. He works like a demon. You would not believe how hard this guy works. He has two jobs. The one, he's a courier for a company, and then at night he delivers wood to people's houses. Because here in Cape Town, people have all sorts of needs for wood deliveries. I don't know. There's just so many wood places here in Cape Town. It's insane. But he does this, right? And that's what he does. And whether it goes well, whether it's not, he always gives praise to God, and he relies on God fully. But he takes responsibility for everything. He has a beautiful family, beautiful wife, beautiful daughter, and his daughter is going to university. This is one of the reasons he's not doing as well, because he's saving up for her university fund so that she can go to university. Guess what? She's not going to struggle like her dad. Right? She's going to get a degree. She's going to get a proper job. She's incredibly well spoken, incredibly intelligent, because they spend time making sure that her education is good. That's the difference between someone who took responsibility for their actions and someone who continues to rely on other people. The person that relies on other people will never get ahead, because other people will never really care about you the same way that you care about you. But I think Hitler got the idea of concentration camps from the UK. Well, Francois, that's not wrong. I mean, the Nazis literally, when asked at the Nuremberg trials, how could you do this? And what made it even sweeter was the lawyer that was asking the Nazis this was a British lawyer. And the Nazi looked at the British guy and he just went, well, we got the idea from you. Obviously the Nazis took it to a whole nother level. But the baseline idea of concentration camps, yes, that came from the Brits. They're from modern battle tanks from the Brits too. Literally, get up and do it yourself. Was it deliberately abandoned after Mbeki was removed? James, I think here's the thing. If you are if you're a savior, so if you're part of the government and you sell yourselves to the black people as saviors, then it's incredibly reliant that the black people at no point start to think that they can do it themselves. That's important. If the black people suddenly start to think that they can save themselves, then you are no longer of any need. So if you're a black savior, it is incumbent that you have black victims. And the same is true for the exact same is true for the white saviors, people like Kim Heller and Peter Kriel. They have a built-in incentive to ensure that black people never liberate themselves, but remain victims forever. Because they make money. Kim Heller sells books based on black suffering. So black suffering ending would be really bad for Kim Heller. There is a genocide in Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. Really? Genocide? Really? That's the... Okay. Can I get a Viva? Viva. Do you guys remember Orkney Snorkney? Please tell me there's someone here that watched Orkney Snorkney. I'm gonna make this country ungovernable. Viva! Viva. Ek voel half kaal. Jy is half kaal. Ek haat Johannesburg. Dis 'n baie kakplek die. Sorry, just when you said Viva, I just had this flashback of Orkney Snorkney. Did you watch Zed? I think so. The one with the alien. Ek het Ouboet en Jongboet ontmoet so 12 jaar gelede. Nice. Okay, dames en here, ladies and gentlemen. It's gonna be, I think, the end for this stream. We covered most of what I wanted to discuss. There's one story that I still wanted to discuss, but I'm probably gonna have to do that tomorrow, not tomorrow, Thursday. We'll be back live with another episode on Thursday. Thank you so much to all of you for coming out, and then I'll discuss this towards the end of the week when I've had time to set everything up. But I'm now gonna go. I have a bunch of work that I still need to be doing. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, to each and every one of you for coming out, for hanging out with me, for spending time with me. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this live stream. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to everyone that supported this channel, that supported the live stream, that gave super chats, that gave memberships. I really cannot do this without your financial support. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be back live on Thursday and Friday. So come check it out. If there is something as an emergency, then we will be live tomorrow as well. So, you can keep an eye, but the official times are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. As always, be good to each other. Always the same, Esther, at 12 o'clock. So the stream always starts at 12 in the afternoon, 12 to 2. We usually go a little bit over 2 o'clock, but it's always from 12 to 2. That's the official time. So, ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourselves. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next